What's going on, you guys? Paul here from Bike Nerds coming at you guys with another video, and in this one we're going to be working on this 1996 Dyno Compe. Now, I've actually had this frame kicking around here for a number of years, and this frame's always been kind of a shapeshifter in the sense that it's been set up numerous different ways throughout the years. But anyway, since this frame is about to turn 30 years old, I figure maybe we could show this one a little bit of love and do something different with this one. Now, I've got an idea brewing on my head, and I'm pretty sure I got enough pieces and parts laying around to make a complete bike out of this one. So I figured some of you guys would maybe want to hang out and help me make something out of this old Dyno Compe. So with that being said, stick around, you guys. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so starting off, you guys can see that the frame itself, considering that it's about 30 years old, it still is in really good shape considering its age. It's got some superficial scratches throughout. It's got some paint chips. The decals got a couple little scars on them. And it's got some chain rub on the bottom bracket and on the inner chain stays there. And it's got some chips and scars and scratches throughout. That's why I really have no qualms on doing what I'm about to do to this bike. And my plan with this one is to strip these decals off of it. And my plan is to basically re-decal it as an 88. So yeah, out with the old and in with the older, if that makes any sense. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started and peeling these decals off. And how I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna try to take a hairdryer and heat these up as gently and as easily as I can. And hopefully they don't fight with us too much. I mean, they've only been on there for nearly 30 years at this point, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, let's get started. All right, so moving on, I'm just gonna go ahead and give the frame a quick once over. Try to get any grease or anything like that, anything that could hinder the adhesion of our new decals. You just wanna make sure all your surfaces that you're about to apply your decals to are nice and clean, and that you got all the residual funk and gunk peeled off. Now the hairdryer did a really good job of removing all the residual adhesive, but there is still little bits here and there. Plus, you definitely don't want to apply brand new graphics over a bunch of dirt. Anywhere there's a little bit of sticker residue left that's being stubborn, sometimes a little bit of this Goo Gone stuff can help. Tell you what, this stuff stinks, but it works. Give it a quick once over again. Hi guys, so as of now I'm just doing a little bit of test fitting, and I am already telling that I'm really gonna like the way this set of decals looks on this thing. Now basically what's critical is you really want to find the exact center of where your decals are gonna line up. And that's just step one. All right, you guys, so I got the center of the decals marked out. I've got the center of the down tube marked out. Now my goal is to get this decal lined up dead nuts center with this down tube, so when I fold it over, everything lines up perfectly on both sides. Easier said than done. Now there's a couple of ways to go about doing this. Some people are gifted and they can just peel the adhesive backer off and they can just line it up and just kind of carefully stick it to it. But I don't really want to risk that because these decals are pretty expensive. I believe I paid $60 for this set of decals. So what I'm going to try doing with this is I'm going to try to basically spray it all down, lubricate it with this Windex here, and then apply the decal. And I'm hoping that by doing that, it will allow me to kind of move the decal around and not just immediately stick to the tube. It'll give me a little bit of leeway to work with it and maybe smooth out any wrinkles if I create any. I'm gonna go ahead and start by just spraying this whole frame down. Another thing you wanna do is take note of where it's like crystal clear, see-through. That way you don't leave a greasy thumbprint. Gosh, this is sketch, but we're going for it. Spraying it down, put it on there. That looks pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and start slowly folding it over. Try to get no wrinkles. You just want to work your way kind of from the inside out. That way you don't trap any air bubbles. Definitely don't rush this process. Just take your time. Wow. Awesome. Not a single wrinkle. I don't want to jinx myself just yet. But so far, that went on beautifully. Just gonna gently wipe away any residual. Try to clean off any excess Windex that gets squeegeed out from underneath. That turned out awesome. Wow. I'll tell you what, that's the new method. I am a fan of that method. That looks awesome. I am very impressed with how that turned out. It's just how we did the first one. I'm gonna stick with this method because it's proven to work out pretty darn well, actually. And start by peeling the decal back with a knife or something. That way you don't risk getting a fingerprint underneath it. I did some jumping around online and was able to determine by just looking at pictures on the BMX Museum forum that the pink side is the side that goes towards the bottom. Theoretically, I probably should have removed this lower gyro cup, but we were able to sneak it under there and make it work. All right, got the head tube decal applied. Now we can work on our seat post tube. Remember, the pink goes on the bottom. After I get the decal applied, just come behind with this cloth here. That looks so awesome. Two and 3/4. 2 3/4. Sweet. All right, guys, so we got the decals all finished up and they turn out absolutely amazing. Now, that was the first time I'd ever used the Windex method of applying decals, and I gotta say, from here on out, that is the only method I'm gonna use because that just made it so much easier. But anyway, now that we got this thing all finished up, next step is to go ahead and start piecing this thing back together, and let's make a complete bike out of it. So let's do it. All right, now when it comes to building a bike, everybody likes to do it their own particular way. I typically like to start at the front of the bike and work my way back, which is why I'm gonna start with installing the stem first. Now, the stem I picked up for it is a reproduction GT Mallet stem, and as you can see, this is the old school 1-inch quill technology stem, and how this thing works is it's got this long bolt that goes all the way through it, and as you can see at the bottom of this piece here, it's got a slash cut, and as you can see attached to the bolt, we got this wedge piece here that's also got a slash cut. So anyway, you insert this into the fork tube, and as you tighten it up, it draws this wedge piece upward, and that allows it to expand within the head of the fork tube, and that's what holds it in place. Now, this is old school technology. We really don't use these anymore. We're onto the clamp style stems now, which are a lot stronger, a lot safer. But anyway, this is just what we had back in the day, and that's what this bike has, so this is what I'm rolling with. So anyway, to install it, you pretty much just drop it into place. And go ahead and set whatever height you want it at. Some people like to bury it. Me, I like a little bit showing there. And I'm not gonna get too carried away with tightening it down, because like I said, I still gotta get the bars installed and a couple other items done, and then I can go ahead and line everything up. This is just to go ahead and kind of get it in place so I can work on installing the handlebars next. Now we can work on getting the handlebars put on. I think this stem's gonna look really good on there. It's definitely gonna go with the 80s like retro throwback style that I'm trying to achieve with this bike. All right, so for the handlebars, I'm using these Haro Kneesavers. I do have a set of Dyno pretzel bars, however, they are extremely rusty and in really horrible condition. Put a dab of grease on these threads here. All right, cool. Now we got the bars on, we can go ahead and get some brake levers put on. All right, so digging around in the parts bin, I was actually able to come up with a set of levers. Now one's a front and one's a back, however they don't match exactly, but I think they're gonna work out for what I'm trying to do with it. Now again, I'm not locking them down, I'm just setting them in place. All right, so now I think I'm gonna go ahead and throw a front brake on this thing. All right guys, so once again, the parts bin prevailed and I was able to come up with this Dyno Compe Bulldog front brake caliper. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing put on there, because it's only right that we have front and rear brakes on this thing. All right guys, so what I think I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna try to snake this front brake cable down through the stem and get this thing all wired up. Hopefully we can do it without really fraying it up too much, if at all. So I'm gonna go ahead and tuck it back in the sheath as far as it can go, and just slowly and carefully start feeding it through our stem bolt. All right, so we got it past our brake caliper. Now we've got to fish it through this little eye loop here. Just kind of pull, gently push and pull. Okay, I think that's gonna work. I think that'll work just fine. So as of now, this feels pretty good. However, I'm not gonna trim or do anything yet, because like I said, I still gotta get the wheel and tire in there. Once everything's in there, then I'll go ahead and adjust and set everything perfectly, but I think that'll work just fine. Anyway, moving on. All right, so continuing on with the brakes, let's go ahead and get a rear caliper installed. This is also a Dyno Compe Bulldog. Perfect match for the front, actually. All right, now let's see if I got a cable for it. All right, so again, rummaging through the parts bin, I was able to come up with this old gyro cable. I think this is like late 80s, to be honest with you. But anyway, hopefully, by the looks of it, it should be long enough. So let's go ahead and try to get this one working for us. In case you guys are wondering why I'm not putting a cable in here, is because if you put a cable in there, then it won't fit into that barrel adjuster. So you guys can spare me that in the comments. I know everybody's an expert in the comment section. All right, so rather than just continually fight with this thing, I'm just gonna go ahead and pull this thing out of there. Now, try to get this thing on there ever so carefully. Oh, one little fray. Come on, get in there. All right, we got it. All right, so we got this rear cable installed, and it is definitely cutting it short, but I think it's gonna work. So we're just gonna keep pushing forward, you guys. So let's go ahead and keep moving. All right, so I was able to find an upper gyro cable for it. However, it feels kind of crusty. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit it with some tri-flow real quick, which honestly I should have done this with all the cables I put on here. I'll probably end up doing that and giving this thing a quick tune up. But definitely this gyro cable needed some attention. All right, now this is the only upper gyro cable that I could find. So hopefully this one works out for us. All right, that feels pretty good actually. So as of now, we got the whole front end pretty much done, minus the wheel and tire. We got the brakes done. I think we're gonna go ahead and work on the drivetrain next. All right, so digging around again in the parts bin, I was able to come up with this winged GT cheese grater sprocket. I believe this is from like an 87-ish GT Performer. And I was also able to come up with this pair of 3-piece chrome GT cranks. Now these are actual GT cranks, and these come off of, I believe, like a 2000-ish, 2002 like GT Mach 1. And I was also able to find a pair of 1-piece cranks that would work. However, we are going for a Pro Comp build, and the Pro Comp came with 3-piece cranks. So I think it's only right that we use these GT 3-piece cranks on this particular build, because I mean, granted they are heavy, but I'm not really trying to make like a lightweight race bike or anything out of this. So I'm more or less just going for looks and aesthetics on this one, and I think these will look really nice on it, accompanied with this silver cheese grater. I was also able to dig up a couple of pairs of pedals for our build here. Now I got a black pair of GT branded platforms, and I also have the silver pair of GT branded platforms. I'm kind of leaning towards the black pair at this point because, you know, to contrast with the frame and the other parts on the bike. But anyway, like I said, I think this is going to be our drivetrain, you guys. I think it's going to work out well. So let's go ahead and start putting it together. So starting off, I'm going to go ahead and smear some fresh grease into this bearing cup here. Now with our freshly cleaned and packed bearing on our crank arm and our spindle, we can go ahead and install it. Second, followed by our non-drive side bearing, which I also cleaned and greased very well. Followed by our retainer inner bearing race. Yeah, I think that'll work. I was having some trouble initially getting this spacing to work, because when I stacked the sprocket on here initially, the bolt was hitting the shell of the bottom bracket. Let's go ahead and put our lock washer on there. Find the spline and line it up. Let's go ahead and lock down our lock nut on our crank set here. All right, that feels pretty good. I'm gonna roll with that. All right, let's go ahead and get this non-drive side crank arm put on there now. Alright, so we got the drivetrain all buttoned up, and it turned out pretty nice. Now I did have to play around with the spacing a little bit to get everything to work, but I think it's going to work just fine. Now we can go about getting some pedals on this thing. Now I kind of knew in the beginning that I was going to go with the black pedals, which is why I took them out in the garage, masked them off, and I lightly hit the ends up with some spray paint just so they didn't look like complete trash going on there. But anyway, now we can go ahead and get these pedals on there, so let's do it. It's always good to grease your threads on your pedals. Alright guys, with the pedals and the drivetrain installed, this thing is really starting to come together, and it's really starting to look like a complete bike. All we realistically need to do now is find some grips, a seat, some wheels and tires, and a chain of course, but in the meantime, I am just stoked with the way this bike is turning out. This thing is looking awesome, and it's not even done yet. So anyway, I just gotta dig around and see what kind of wheels I can find for this thing. So let's keep going. All right, so after digging around a little bit, I was able to come up with these 6-spoke GT Tomahawk mags, and I think these are gonna look amazing on this build, but the only thing is they definitely need some love and attention in the bearing department. So before I put them on, I'm gonna go ahead and break them down, clean them up, repack the bearings, and get them all dialed in, just so they roll nice and smooth for us. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. go ahead and pop this little rubber seal out of here. Look at that. Can you guys see that? That is disgusting. That is basically just sheer rust. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull all these bearings out. Put them in a little jar over here for safekeeping. Let's go and pop this side open now. Yeah, these are pretty gross too. Look at that. That is icky. Icky yucky. You want to clean all the icky yucky out of there. Now let's break down the front. 15. Usually the fronts are 13s, but yeah, I guess every company's different, right? Front bearings are actually pretty clean. Alright, so while I got the wheels all broken down, no bearings, no axles, no nothing, I think now is a better time as ever to go ahead and I'm going to take these down and just try to clean these up the best I can. Get some of that, as you can see, there's like spider webs inside there, and as you can see, there's like spider webs in the holes, and you can see there's just some residual dirt and stuff. So now's a good time to get these all cleaned up, and once we do that, we can go ahead and put them all back together. There's one. All right, awesome. Okay, now while our wheels are drying, we can go ahead and clean these bearings up. These front bearings weren't even bad. Front bearings cleaned up like brand new. So I'll just start off with a big blob of grease. Remember, 9 bearings per side. 7, 8. Put our seal in. Pressed in super easy. Three, 4, 5. That is a well-greased hub. Get our seal sitting nice and flush. It was sitting a little bit crooked. Now it's nice and flat. This one feels really nice. I'd say this one's perfect. All right, sweet. Wheels are done. All right, you guys, so with the wheels finally dialed in, it's time to move on to tires now. And for tires, I selected these old school, kind of a throwback nod to the tires we used to run back in the day. And it's just kind of a skin wall with the GT wing logo. And as you can see, it's got the GT tread pattern all throughout with the solid band in the middle for less rolling resistance. 20 by 175 in size, and I think these are going to look absolutely amazing on this build, especially on the Tomahawk mags. So let's go ahead and get these things put on there. Start with getting our tube put in there. I don't know how you guys do it, but I like to add just a little bit of air to the tube. Not a whole lot, just enough for it to form its shape. Then I load it into the tire, just like so. And always line up your valve stem with your logo if that sort of thing concerns you. Also take note of which way the wheel spins. These wheels are directional. just go ahead and put the tire on. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Oh, these are gonna look so good. Love it. BMX bikes are the best. No tire levers, no nonsense. Sometimes you gotta wrestle with them a little bit. Get them to line up the way you want them to. All right, so I think that's about as good as we're gonna get with the front one. Let's move on to the back one now. Let's get this front wheel put on. All right, now that we got the wheel on, we can actually dial in this front brake. That feels good. Lock that cable down. All right, so let's get this back wheel put on. Install our new 16 tooth freewheel. I went with a 16 tooth because I believe that's what this bike originally came with. And with our front sprocket, that gives us like a gear ratio, a gear inch of like 55. All right, let's go ahead and get a chain on this thing now. Chain is on. This brake already feels good, so I'm just gonna lock this cable down and call it good. All right, so with the wheels and tires on, this thing is really starting to come together. All we got left to do now is put some grips on it and find a seat for it, and this thing will be ready to ride. We are almost done with this thing, you guys, so let's keep going. All right, so now that we got the bike on the ground, I'm gonna go ahead and finalize and adjust everything, starting with setting these handlebars. All right, I like the way that feels. It looks good too. Let's roll with that. I'm also going to tighten this stem up. Make sure everything's nice and straight. Everything looks good. There it is. All right, time for a set of grips and this thing will be done. Yes. All right, so for grips, I was able to come up with these old school GT branded AME grips. So I'm just gonna go ahead and run these. And I'll probably end up getting some different ones down the road, but for now, I think these will work just fine. Start by putting them on, pushing them as far as you can. Then I like to come in with some compressed air and send it home. Do this one now. And I tell you, it don't get much easier than that. There we go. All I got left to do is lock down these levers, and this thing is done. All right, you guys, so as of now, this thing is 100% complete and ready to ride. The only thing I want to do before I do that is go ahead and give it a quick wipe down, get all of our greasy handprints and fingerprints off it, and just give it a quick once over. So let's do that real quick. I'm also going to hit it with a quick coat of wax just to help bury some of those small superficial scratches all throughout. It doesn't really need much, but I figure it wouldn't hurt. It also never hurts to lube the chain up. All right, you guys, so as you can see, the bike is now 100% complete and ready to go. This thing actually turned out much better than I thought it was going to, especially the decals. Like I said, I wasn't sure if that Windex trick was gonna work at all, but it actually ended up working very good. And from a pile of parts and a frame that we had laying around, we were able to make this amazing retro rider 96/88 Dyno Pro Comp out of it. And like I said, this is all pretty much just stuff I had laying around with the exception of the tires and the decals. So like I said, this is actually a pretty fun build, you guys. So I'm gonna take it outside and let's go for a ride. haven't done that in over 20 years, you guys. This thing is sweet. All right, guys, so I'm just out here cruising around, and this thing rides so nice. I know I say that about every bike pretty much, but you know, I guess that's just how they feel after you give them some love. This thing is actually cruising along just fine. Everything is dialed with it. Brakes feel nice, really dialed. Everything feels nice and solid. Pedals nice. Everything feels really good. Yeah, we're just out cruising around. Sun's about to go down here in a little bit, so I'm just getting it while I can. Yeah, just out here cruising around. Tomahawk chopping on the old dyno. Alright, you guys, so I just got back from cruising this thing around, and not only does this thing look awesome, this thing rides awesome as well. I couldn't be any happier with the way this thing turned out. And my favorite thing about it is I really don't have that much money into it at this point. It was just a frame and a bunch of spare parts I had laying around. All I had to do was go get these decals. I'm just glad I seen these decals online, because it's these decals that actually inspired this entire project. Without seeing these decals, this thing would still be a bunch of parts laying around. It turned this old pile of parts into something that we can cruise around in and actually have fun with. And that was kind of the idea behind this project anyway, was to make a low buck, no regrets cruiser that I could just pedal around on and not have to worry about. This is all, for the most part, stuff that I had laying around. But anyway, you guys, if you guys actually stuck around and watched this video from beginning to end, I really appreciate you guys. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps out the channel. I think with the last video, we were able to break like 230 subscribers, give or take. I'd love nothing more than to see us at like 500 plus subscribers and beyond. I'm just trying to grow the channel slowly and organically. That's why I'm not like sharing these videos on Facebook groups and stuff like that. So if you guys actually found this video on your own and subscribed on your own, I really appreciate you. You guys are the real ones. But in the meantime, I think that's going to do it for this one. But if you look around me, you can see there's really no shortage of projects coming up. So be sure to stick around. Until then, this is Paul from Bike Nerds signing out, and I'll see you in the next one. From Bike Nerds signing out, and I'll see you in the next one. I don't know what that was. Maybe we can piece something out of that. 3-piece chicken dinner.